Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Offbeat Talks, where we look forward to looking back. Today, we have actually a very special person, not just as a professional, but also as a good friend. I'd actually run this project before it even became a thing through him, and he gave me quite a favorable view of it. I was like, yeah, sure, I'm happy to take part. Actually, the very first person to say, privately say, yep, once it's running, I'll do it. So with all his experience, also known as Dr. Crick for the Commedia scene, we have Olly Crick. Thank you for joining us, Olly.
Thank you. I am indeed a doctor. That's a PhD. And I'm indeed enthusiastic after a long time with Commedia. So the two, yes, and my PhD was in Commedia. So happy to answer your questions or start a heated debate in the small pond that is Commedia dell'arte enthusiasm.
Oh, we will be touching on Commedia, but only a fraction of things, because I know you can go on for hours and hours, and I could do so as well. But I think I would actually like to tell people that this interview was interrupted. It was supposed to happen last week. It was actually supposed to be the very first Offbeat Talks interview. But for technological circumstances, or lack thereof, we've had to postpone this interview for about a week. So technology has been a bit of a bummer for both of us. However, if we were to see this man's dominion of social media and browse through his timeline, you've shared a lot of things. One of the things, other than images and stuff on Commedia, is your political opinions, and you make that quite clear, and you're very outspoken about that. And my first question was, when did that political sense start? When did you realize, not only am I political and politicized, but I also want to voice that political opinion?
The hardest thing about adopting, I suppose, a left-wing attitude is the attack you'll always get. But that means we'll pay more taxes, man, from other people. When they actually realise that actually what they get for the taxes is they get refuse collection, they get the police force, they get the national health, and if they're still the Empire Brigade, they get the army as well, and all the other people with guns and uniform. So taking a left-wing stance is predicated on the idea of there being actually a community of people who, as a large group of people, share and care and share the same values. The general issue with Tories is that they look after number one, and we can afford good health care because we have more money than anyone else. And the current lot also seem to have that most terrifying thing, which is a right. They have the thought that they have the right to govern us how they feel fit. There are many examples of their felonious iniquity and turning a democracy into basically a kleptocracy. And there's a lot of government contracts are routinely awarded through tender, which means someone who's official, which means you make a bid for a government tender. There are whole websites that do this. And this current cabinet have just been awarding it to their mates and things like that without any competitive tender. And some of the businesses or the official firms these characters have been awarded are companies, well, paper companies. They're basically just, set up to take the money and then do the work, rather than the firm having a particular expertise in logistics. Say, the one that started was something about cross-channel ferries, and it was awarded to a company that some cabinet minister's sister was involved in it. and the company had no boats and no expertise in customs documentation and the expedition of goods through borders. So you kind of go, you know, but then because in the last but two elections, there was a Liberal Democrat Conservative alliance, which is incidentally why everybody's paying fees for universities apart from getting a grant. That happened during that. We had
was it different
thing
back then?
called, well, yeah. Oh, I went to university on a grant. The Fixed Term Parliament Act, which basically changed very significantly the way British democracy, or British parliamentary democracy, I'll be specific, works. You know, generally, if the whole of Parliament and the country thought you were a tosser as Prime Minister, you resigned. It was just the way things done. The Fixed Term Parliament Act basically made it law that you were your party was elected for 5 years. So when Cameron resigned, instead of there being an election, we just had the new head of the Tory party, who was Theresa May, became Prime Minister. But you kind of go, well, it's not really the idea of democracy, really, is it? But it's a very good way of keeping your party in power. And then when she was forced out, we got Boris for the first time, which was governance.
Sorry, Olly, who was in government by the time you were going to uni?
Margaret Thatcher came in for the first time. It was a Labour government, James Callaghan, so that's a long time ago, so 70s.
Were you a leftist back then?
I was 18, 19, you know, your age, maybe a bit younger, so it's kind of the issue, really. If you have lots of money and lots of privilege, the idea of a community doesn't really bother you, because mummy and daddy and your trust fund will pay for everything. So it doesn't have any impact on your personal life, effectively, you know, because you can afford everything. There's an issue which has been flagged up an awful lot in the BBC and within the English acting profession, that it doesn't represent Britain anymore, because the BBC, there are no working class writers, is the thing. There are no, what's the word? Interns. They have very low paid internship to be a BBC writer, and you can't afford that, you know. And if you have to work for a living, if you have to pay the rent, you can't afford those. So it's only people who have access to private funds to supplement when they're being an intern, can do that. So it's very unlikely to be working class. So there's a whole area of experience that is being not written from that perspective. Look up, if you're listening to this and you're not bored by the tone of my voice, Boys from the Black Stuff is a Alan Bleasdale thing, and it was about and also Auf Wiedersehen Pet, two BBC sitcoms from the 70s, not sitcoms but series from the 70s, 80s. Auf Wiedersehen Pet was taking the Thatcherite economic collapse of the working classes, in fact it inspired the working classes, and it was about a group of English brickies who were, gasp, shock horror, travelling to Europe in order to work in the very well organised German and a building trade. You know, it's called Auf Wiedersehen Pet, because the only work these guys could find was going abroad. And Boys from the Black Stuff, I can't remember the actor's name, Yussa Hughes, who the same actor played in a Theoden in Lord of the Rings. If my kids were here with their instant connection with IMDb, they would tell me exactly who this person was. And it was a group of unemployed people who got together to form a tarmacking gang, you know, and that was kind of a social realist series. The people who make these are no longer, the attitude to the people who write these, they can't get onto the BBC, basically, or you know, or they don't. You know, it's basically structurally impossible. And the same thing happens with acting. So there aren't any working class actors, because of drama schools now, because there's so many people applying for drama schools. What happens is they now charge a fee for auditions, and they charge another fee for recall auditions. So you might have to pay 3 lots of audition fees and travel from wherever you live to the drama school. Again, it's a ridiculous cost, which basically prices it out of low-income people. So I don't know what percentage of Britain is classified as low income. I think it's scarily high, and it's going up. So things like the BBC is becoming more middle class orientated. They are aware of this, but they're also running scared of the Tories.
Would you have not gone to uni if it not for the grant? As in, monetarily speaking?
See, my position is slightly strange in the sense of both my parents were Labour Party supporters, but slightly to the right wing of the Labour Party, both academics. And they didn't like the local comprehensive schools, so they sent me to a public school. And you know, and being kind of someone who was vaguely left wing, being thrown into the bear pit, where they basically, the education was very good, but a right-wing libertarian education is rather good, but the attitude and the financial backing of most of the people I was at school with was not good. When I was class with another Oliver, no, not Oliver, Bernard Jenkins. So it was kind of, my first really reactions to politics was basically trying to drop it all and
so your first reaction was kind of resolve the
conflict after university by becoming a juggler and and a busker, really, because
I definitely would like to get to that part. But first, I was to that actually, because you said your parents, both your parents, were Labour Party members.
Labour Party supporters. I think my dad was a member.
Fair. Was politics discussed in the Crick household in your teens?
Yes, yeah. I mean, my dad my late father was Professor Sir Bernard Crick, who founded Citizenship, wrote George Orwell's biography, wrote still, and you can go and read it. It's outdated now because the example of the book In Defence of Politics, which basically is the only sensible defence of democracy that's ever been written. I'm saying this about my dad, so whom no one always gets on with. So actually, I believe this. He basically said, democracy is a ridiculously useless, system for actually government, except it's better than all the other ones, which involve basically various degrees of kind of oligarchy and a kleptocracy and kind of autocracy. You have to engage with democracy if you don't want to be run by people like Boris, whose basic mission is to screw democracy over it and stay in control, destroy and sell off all national assets like the National Health Service, the BBC, for profit. So, there was an understanding. Whether you personally engage with stuff your father holds dear at any early age is kind of is a moot point. I've come round to that, to those opinions, because my career is basically downwardly mobile from my parents' academic position, in the sense that I became a street performer, became an FE teacher, worked as a busker and a low-level actor, really not liking the idea of commercial theatre, but I don't oppose it, because I still think that, what are you doing on this planet? Are you serving yourself or are you serving the community? So the whole position that I take with theatre is that you're looking for a place whereby you are entertaining enough and skillful enough so people are prepared to pay to see you. Otherwise, what the hell are you doing in that kind of profession? But also the level of engagement with the theatre you are creating is such that A, it creates a sense of community, and B, it asks questions of society. That sounds a very dull way of doing it. And that is politics rather than ideology. I think, and this is my big revelation for the world, boys and girls, gentlemen, there is a hell of a difference between a political approach to something and an ideological approach to something. And you say, oh, I don't like that, oh, that's political, oh no, you know, don't get involved. All politics is, it's a discussion of the resources available. So on some level, every single play, whether it's emotional resources or whatever, is an engagement with politics. And politics, the process of politics, even though its members might have ideological positions, is open-ended. So it's actually, it's the thing for drama. It's the thing for theatre, because it's a staged contestation. There may not be a resolution. Depends whether you want a tragic resolution or a comic resolution. Both are ridiculous in terms of real life. Or a Brechtian socialist resolution, when they will have, oh, let's have a talk about it now. That's the best way to solve resources. So basic politics, every play is political because it's a contestation of resources. So it's basically everyone can commit to the to politics because it's a process. It's kind of going, what do I think about, you know, the way the resources of the country are being spent, you know, and it's even in the Tory party now, there are some little rumblings about, you know, why are all these big government contracts being awarded to, you know, to the ruling elite within the Tory parties. You know, that small section of people, why are they being awarded without public tender? You know.
Do you feel, do you feel that commercial theatre, or did you feel back then, and maybe you've changed your opinion, but that commercial theatre as you saw it then didn't ask the questions that need to be asked, or was young Crick just not even concerned with those?
Oh no,
that type of thinking.
Oh no, commercial theatre can and does do. It just requires an incredible level of dedication and skill, and a high specialisation of ability, or high specialisation of training. I can sing, I can play instruments badly. I'm not a musical, you know, I'm not. My skill was in keeping a crowd in the street. It wasn't in learning, you know, 8 million lines of Shakespeare in order to, at my age, perform King Lear. You know that, you know, I was kind of more into the edgy, danger stuff of theatre, which is a personal level of, you know, of commitment. It was, you know, I want risky stuff. You know, I don't want. I like performing in the open air. You know, the whole notion just walking into the green room and there's a wall of lights and you say your lines and you go off and the crowd go, oh, he was wonderful. It's kind of, well, that you might as well watch telly, you know. A few years ago, there's a Terry Pratchett show called Nation that the National Theatre did. This is just for an example. There may be other examples that counter my argument. That was done at the big Christmas show, and it used loads and loads of breaking the fourth wall techniques that had been pioneered by alternative, you know, theatre people since the 80s, and now it had been borrowed by the National Theatre, you know, used in a, you know, in a multi-million-pound, no, that's a joke, you know, in a very well-funded kind of Christmas, you know, production. So there's an element of people who are working on the fringes of the business of theatre, artists who are creating new ways of using a limited amount of resources in order to create the maximum amount of effect. And then these are being borrowed, or these techniques are being commoditized. There's an academic word for you. You know, instead of, but just the example of this Terry Pratchett thing, there was all these vultures called grandpa birds in the show, which were done by puppets, you know, and the actors manipulating the puppets from perfect view, and these puppets were like a little shoe as the beak, and then a bin liner, just a normal black bin liner wrapped round, and they made great rustling noises, and when they were moving around, and you're kind of going, is that the best the National Theatre can do? You know, that, you know, that is actually a statement, the fact that we are doing theatre here, and if it's a bin liner and a shoe, it's also a statement of the magic theatre that we've made the audience believe that a bin liner and a shoe and a bit of skill is a vulture. but it's also, at some point, it was somebody without the financial backing actually inventing that way of doing something on a budget.
And was that particularly relevant when you were out busking and joined, you know, when you were training as a juggler and whatnot? The scarcity.
Well,
of
in the
it
sense,
as a
when I
positive.
was doing that in the 80s,
that sounded very, very
yeah, well,
caricaturish.
the whole danger of getting old is you become, when I was young, it was better. You're always having to continually reinvent yourself as a performer and as a creator, making sure that you bring your experience to what you're doing, and not, look, I've been doing this for ages, darling. You really ought to listen to me, as a point of privilege. There's a friend of mine at college who is now, for some reason, he's a doctor in military strategy, but he basically had this sweep-all statement that no system deserves to survive unless it can be replaced by a better system, right? Which is, oh my God, that's really frightening. But actually, no way of doing theatre deserves to survive it if it can be replaced by a better one. So the whole process is continually reinventing as society evolves. So
what happened back in the 80s that you feel has now renovated?
Right, there was lots of things started. The thing, I was involved with this thing called New Circus. And what New Circus was no animal circus. And I was, you know, into Commedia at that stage and done as much training as I could track down, because it was
how old were you at the time?
21, 22, 23, something like that. And by a process of luck, ended up, by going to someone's classes, ended up covering for a teacher, a guy running workshops at drama schools, and when he was off acting, I would cover his classes. So my first teaching gig ever was at RADA, which was kind of like, whoa, that was kind of like exciting. But what it was, because things like circus or New Circus was a new thing, the approach to creating it was autodidactic. There was no New Circus schools. There was only people who were motivated to find out about it gathering together. So basically, and there wasn't the range of training available. So you went to, if there was a puppet workshop, which was a bit different from theatre, you went to the puppet workshop. If there was a Commedia workshop, you went to that. If you went to a clown workshop, you went to that. If there was a mime workshop, you went to that. If there was, you know, somebody from the Cock running, you know, came over, you know, trying to earn some pennies doing a Buffon workshop, you went and did that. So you were amassing a range of skills. And what I got headhunted for, a place in Bristol, which is now Commedia, but was then called Full Time, was, in terms of New Circus being a no animal circus, was what do you replace the animals with? And one of them was actually dramatic structures and physical acting. So I was using the way you write stories for Commedia, and, you know, and the over-the-top physical acting as a way of getting, you know, basically crusty jugglers to learn to act or to learn to create shows. It's very easy to learn a circus skill. Well, it's not easy to learn a circus skill, but it's very easy to get, you know, if you're not using trapeze or got too much health and safety. I mean, you know, some people in those days, because there was no place you could put a circus rig up, so people would go off in the Forest of Dean and, you know, hang a rig over a big, you know, oak tree and, you know, and work there. And there weren't places, you know, and there was no internet then, so you could, if you wanted to learn a juggling trick that somebody knew, you had to track down where they were going to be in the workshops and go and bother them. So it was a lot more social then. But what it meant was everybody was their own creator, because there wasn't this vast range on YouTube or Vimeo of already existing product. You know, there was a lot more freedom to create your own. Yeah, there were storytellers as well. You know, New Circus became a thing. Storytelling became a thing. What has happened is these moments of excitement or little moments of exploration have now become official. There is now Full Time, when Bankrupt got changed to Commedia, now offers a degree. It now has a curriculum. It now has, you know, curriculum leaders. It now has a process. It's stopped being, it claims to be autodidactic, but is less so. I live in Gloucestershire, which is half an hour north of Bristol. I've seen Commedia, you know, students in about 20 years come to the village hall touring circuit. Never, you know, I've seen them in, you know, it's, so they're being trained, or once there's training happens, the student follows the training, and they're being pushed in much more narrow lines, so they stop becoming an artist or stop looking at things. I mean,
what was the mindset?
It's not, it becomes a mindset. You know, you spend 3 years and are focusing on 2 5-minute skills acts, you know, which are incredible, but they're very specific in how you say, you know, in how you sell them, rather than let's get together to do a show. Now, going against that is the whole Boomtown and the Invisible Circus and secret cinema thing. That all came from that kind of autodidactic stuff, and people trying to create immersive environments, and things like that. So, I mean, you know, the same thing about storytelling, in a sense of, you know, there were a few storytellers, you know, people who just called themselves storytellers and started telling stories, and then there was a storytelling school, and you know, there suddenly became a methodology and a correct way of kind of telling stories. And I'm kind of going, well, why is this a right way? You know, who is the ultimate arbiter? And I utterly accept that there's a discipline of learning, a learning process to any skill. I won't go into what they are, because that's not
Separate
not writing people curriculums unless they pay me, because I find it boring. And it requires a lot of dedication and talking nicely to people. But the ultimate arbiter is always the audience. You know, can you entertain them and can you not? All you're being offered in your education is a system in a theatre or whatever it is, education. Storytelling or Commedia or mask or circus or whatever. You're being offered an avenue of communication with the audience. Now then, what you make of that communication is up to you. And the best and easiest thing to create is something that makes the audience think of nothing. You know, you simply entertain them with a new skill, a new trick, and emotional adventure. And an emotional adventure doesn't change the planet. It just kind of goes, oh yes, I feel like that. I don't feel like that.
What people clap after a routine, say. Enjoy.
Yes. There's part of the Hamburg group, a post-war. They call him a post-Marxist, but he's definitely a Marxist left-wing. A theoretician called Theodor Adorno, who's quite interesting. He basically makes the point that anything that doesn't talk, any entertainment that just is entertainment and operates on an emotional, you know, level, looking at the emotional relationships between people, if it doesn't engage itself with what the political situation at the time, it induces, is quite a state of political helplessness in the audience. You know, everyone goes, "Oh, EastEnders is amazing." I'm going, you know, it's about real people in the East End. No, no, it isn't. And it's not even about the politics. It's not even about the government. It's not even about how much rent you pay. It's not about the, you know, it's not about the big frames that affect everybody's lives. There've been some good films that make entertainment out of these things. Dagenham, Brassed Off. That was all about a mining band in the pit closures. I know, the Full Monty. Oh my God, there's no work in the Sheffield steel industries. You know, let's become some male strippers. You know, but they kind of, in the emotional journey of personal success, you lose the bigger point, which was, you know, that this show is set in a time of economic crisis and economic disaster. Brassed Off is really good because right at the end, you know, they give, you know, Pete Postlethwaite this really good speech, which just reminds you this is not just a happy ending. So the process is always keeping yourself up to date with what is going on and trying to engage through your, you know, skill, you know, or your society. The attitude, and even being, even being political, and I'm talking about in the low-key sense of being political, not being ideological. Just the word political scares people. In forming theatre and creating stuff, you tend to be risk averse, because you've got to earn a living, somehow, doing this crazy shit. So it's very rare you get, active debate happening in theatre. The economic unit of theatre that's survival is generally a solo show. Oh God, save us from another solo show. I mean, this is by Simon McBurney, in which case it's not really a solo show. The crew behind him is, I don't know, in The Encounter with 18 sound engineers and kind of, another obscure writer that's of great significance that we haven't heard of. But
the most elaborate solo show by.
Oh yes. It's a business venture.
To this actually, not to the solo show part, but to theatres. I love your mug. Quite nice. That's definitely staying.
Captain Havoc.
Yeah. First, I actually want to refer to an extract that you posted, written by Mike Bradwell on theatre.
Oh yeah.
And actually, I'll read a little extract on that. And it says the following: real theatre must be sexy, subversive, dangerous, and fun, and in constant opposition to the establishment. The day music died was not the day that Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper, were killed in the plane crash. The music died on the day Elvis joined the U.S. Army. Theatre being in constant opposition to the establishment. Well, what's the, not just in the sense that it would conform itself, but what is the humanist responsibility that theatre should have or should not?
Well, it's simply asking questions. It's simply asking questions. It asks the questions of kind of human resources. I mean, I think what is the phrase? Sexy, subversive, dangerous.
Sexy,
all these things are, sexy is, it has to be attractive. There has to be a reason to watch it. You don't, otherwise I'll go to a lecture on Marxism, for my fun. Some people do. I'm not knocking it. But if you could put that into a play, that'd be more interesting. I mean, politics asks the questions. Drama is a contrast. It's a combat. It's putting things in opposition. If you follow the Marxist line, it's looking for dialectics. It's looking for how you can. I don't think they like the word compromise. But you're looking at where is the truth, within this, and actually what is the truth for each individual member of an audience. So rather than, theatre is always asking the question, why are you being governed in this way? And it's a question, and people up power don't like people asking that questions, because they like to think they're in charge and they're doing the right thing. And you kind of go, show a bit of humility, you arseholes. It's
making that statement would perhaps, behind the magic of the theatre, you don't realize they're kind of shaking you, but then
see the magic of the theatre. When you say the magic of the theatre, it isn't like you're not going, the political subversiveness of the theatre. The phrase is duff. Magic of theatre. It implies that, wow, I'm going to be amazed, I'm going to be entertained. Oh my God. No, actually the point is to make you go, oh really? So in fact, what happens if we put a play on, that Boris Johnson is the hero? Okay. There's a subversive idea, for you. Then you have to go, we have to be very carefully stylistically, here, because, if we play it really over the top and actually physical, we might be seen to be satirical, as in the whole play is basically going, no, all these positions we're proposing here are utterly wrong, and the guys are, a front for some even worse people, or else it's a very entertaining play, but people go away going, was the playwright defending that arsehole? So, by it's almost the entertainment. The entertainment is the bait for thought, and it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm going to go away and think about this. It's you can literally just put two images next to each other. I mean, Dickens is a really hard writer to get into.
That was exactly my next question.
He's a really hard writer to get into, but the images he creates of the juxtaposition of poverty and excessive wealth, and the machinations of the society in which he lived in and how people behaved, they all became grotesque figures. And we go, oh, lovely Dickensian, character acting. Forget the character acting. What was that person representing? As soon as the actor falls in love with the character too much and it becomes too comic, we forget the context. I mean, why the hell do they have, everyone plays Christmas Carol, the Christmas Carol, and it's all about the ghosts, isn't it? It isn't about this evil fuckwit capitalist has choices to make in his life that affect other
life
people.
And death
will they suffer and will they not?
Well, the twists, very renowned line is, "Please, sir, can I have some more?"
And they turn it into a sodding musical, and the whole musical theatre posse, you go, ooh, about the songs, you go, what's the political message? Les Miserables, it's about the Paris Commune, and all the acting crew, oh, that's a really lovely song. It's gone too, they've made it too beautiful, so they forget the sodding context.
And to that, actually, Olly, can you share with not just me, but the audience who might be watching us? We're targeting people around my age that will kind of be exploring their way into this industry. Writers, authors, directors, perhaps in the most German auteur sort of sense, and or
amateur, yeah.
That have and or plays that have made you ask the most questions or the deepest questions?
Oh, good Lord. I'm not very good on political plays. Go and Pabst, W. Pabst and Brecht doing their version of the Drei Groschen opera.
Or just questions, not necessarily.
Yeah, no. I mean, things you've got to go and see.
Or read.
Things that are exciting. I mean, I've seen some monumentally good shows. I saw the Peter Brook Mahabarata. I saw all. It's 3-hour plays. I saw them all in a day.
Lucky you.
In the Ginza Saison Theatre in Tokyo. It was kind of wacky. But you kind of go, what's the point of that? It's a bunch of, but Peter Brook's whole approach was, can you do multinational theatre? Can you take themes from around the world and can you use a bunch of, extremely good actors, in order to create a story that transcends racial, national and spiritual barriers? And the answer is, yeah, if you throw enough money at it and get enough, get enough good actors. And one of the actors in it was really peculiar watching, because there's a whole bunch of actors coming on stage as a chorus and your eyes are suddenly going, who the hell is that guy? One of them just stands out more. And it was Richard Cheslak, who was from, Grotowski's Paul Theatre. And everyone else was, entirely competent as an actor, doing their job amazingly, but your eyes were just riveted on this guy because he burned with some crazy inner fire and he was doing his job. And it was like, who's this in the program? Oh my God, it's him. It's the guy who did The Constant Prince. It's the guy who could, by breath control, change his skin tone. It's kind of, extraordinary physical training. I mean, but it kind of, I think the really big shows just go, make you ask questions. I mean, it was a piece of shameless sentimentalism that made me go back into theatre and think about theatre as an option, because I was being a juggling busker because it was Real Men and Anarchist, and somebody gave me tickets to see Cyrano de Bergerac done by the Royal Shakespeare Company with Derek Jacobi, a young-ish Derek Jacobi, as Cyrano. And it was riveting. I think Terry Hands, he's a very good director, and I directed it. But even the Royal Shakespeare Company's become it's become a flagship commodity. You know, it's where you go to see well-produced Shakespeare. You know, and it's, you know, and you go to see, and you go to Stratford in the summer, and half the audience are tourists. So you can go, oh, it's the heritage industry, so it's not theatre. I mean, there's a guy. There's a guy who he wasn't political, but he was kind of an anarchist adventure, sadly dead, called Ken Campbell, who used to do really good solo stand-up shows, and opened the Cottesloe Theatre at the National. That's a small experimental one, with an 11-hour version of a bunch of kind of hippie conspiracy theory books called Illuminatus. Sadly, not, you know, with a designer who was Bill Drummond of the KLF, and it had Bill Nye and Chris Langham, and it had some, you know, amazing actors in it that started their career, and it was the most amazing show. You know, it basically said, let's try this. You know, one of the main characters is a dolphin, so you know, there's a dolphin puppet. They made all these sets, and half the shows happened when one of the characters takes, I don't know, super acid, and kind of, you know, and sees all the world conspiracy theories. So they created all these mini sets on trucks. So somebody would sit in this tiny bed, and all these little, you know, perspective little sets would move around them, and, you know, they were using pickup trucks, and, you know, a live rock band and thing. And he ran this outfit called the Science Fiction Theatre of Liverpool, when he attempted to, you know, stage H.P. Lovecraft stories. You know, he's really attempting the impossible. So when you looked at them, and I was a fan, even when they kind of, he went, that bit really didn't work, but, you know, the next bit was so cheeky and so amazing that, but again, you know, that's my personal taste. It wasn't ideological. It wasn't really political. It was trying things out. It was experimental. It was certainly something you hadn't seen before. So
playwrights that you feel ask perhaps the more interesting questions.
Yeah. I don't think he asked questions. I think he was just amazing. You know, I mean, I'm just gonna try and find. I mean, I'm just trying to find somewhere, because he was very aphoristic. There's books written about him. It's basically, you know, he attempted to do very strange things, like translate Macbeth into Pidgin English.
What?
Right? Well, there's an explanation on SoundCloud. If you look up Macbeth in Pidgin on SoundCloud, there's a little extract of him explaining what Pidgin English is. Now that was kind of political in a way, because Pidgin English is it's a trade language. It's a lingua franca, but it developed out of when the British Empire was a trading empire, and they used native workers to run, in this case, the sugarcane plantations in Queensland in Australia. The easiest way to control the workers they were using was grab one worker from each Pacific island, so nobody spoke the same language, so they couldn't organize. So the only language that they had in common was the language spoken by their guards and their overseers. So all these people who didn't speak the same language, listening to commonalities in the sounds made by their captors, and then created this language out of it, and that's Pidgin English. And then for some reason he translates Macbeth into it, and he was exploring, you know, the sonic qualities of it. Nara faladay, nara faladay, nara faladay mo is and tomorrow creeps on this petty world. And snail speed's day long day. You know, it's crackers, but it shows, you know, almost the infinite variety in theatre, in the sense that you can communicate without using your language. I mean, for me, I'm just going to go in Commedia. for a moment. One of the
We're
reasons
not
I'm in
fans
the
of
Commedia.
Commedia, so nice
No. But it's to do with how open theatre is. It isn't just musical theatre. It isn't just melodrama. It isn't just political theatre. It can reach strange parts of your body by the sonic quality. By the quality of the sounds that people make. And this Commedia show that made me go, I want to do that. That's interesting. It was done in a mixture of French, Spanish, Italian, and English, and I saw it in Paris. And you're kind of going, bloody hell, it works. And you suddenly pick up the different rhythms of each language, and what each language becomes really good at expressing just comes out in the sound, because you're following the action through the physical shapes and their emotional reactions of the actors on stage. And then you get given this amazing sound quality on top of it on stage. And you kind of go, actually, language, it's part of theatre, but you don't have to understand it. The actor just has to speak it. And it's when you take risks like that. I mean, I don't think it's a big risk on the continent doing that, because every French person speaks English in another language. Every Spaniard understands Italian, though they don't work, and vice versa, though they don't admit it. There's a lot more language bleed or crossover on the continent. But for me as a Brit, seeing this, it's kind of like, it was like watching opera but enjoying it, and it wasn't the singing, it was the sounds of the words. Opera's interesting.
I was just going to say that if we wanted to make this video when it goes up on YouTube and social media, Olly Crick, it was like watching opera but interesting. It's like, wow, that's a big statement.
Well, the problem with opera is that opera is in such tight musical genres that if you don't like that particular genre, if you don't like Donizetti, if you don't like Wagner, and how could you not like Mozart, or whatever. Oh, Sondheim, man, he's so good. If you don't like those particular things, it's pointless going to see something like them. So they become very specialised, which is kind of back to what I was saying earlier in terms of actors training. What happens now is people tend to go down, tram lines. You are trained into, you're trained in that, so you won't go and see anything outside that genre because it's not what you feel safe in. And I think back to what Mark Bradwell was saying, theatre needs to open up the areas of lack of safety, which is where the hard questions about life, the universe, and everything, to quote Douglas Adams.
So I think it's a given, but it's more of a prompt for you to expand on this. But would the actor forever, right? This should be a definite recommendation. But how important it is for the young actor now to watch everything and be exposed to everything, as in from almost every genre, almost even things.
To a certain extent. Yes, see everything, go to everything, because, you might go, oh, I didn't like that, but that was amazing. You need to open yourself up to lots of different ideas. I'm reading a very scatty book written by someone very bright who's trying to be clever, but it doesn't quite work out, called How to Think Like Shakespeare. That's damning. So sorry, author, that's damning you. But what it is interesting about is trying to define the way someone in Shakespeare's time, for example, Shakespeare, thought. And there's a lot more hard, rigorous learning than you would have certainly thought. So the craft and the technique of what you're doing becomes a lot harder. Becomes, the mental templates you absorb. You need to, have a wide range of stuff. You need to immerse yourself in, in the mechanics of how something works, and you need to copy. In order to find out how something works, you copy it. As an actor, can you do Henry V like Ken Branagh? Can you do it like Simon Callow? Can you do it like Ian McKellen? Can you do it? Can you take that whole mindset on? I mean, but at the same time, it's get under the skin of something, and that's hard work. The trouble with drama schools is it trains people for a perception of what the industry is at the minute. So they're guiding kids down a particular path. I mean, a good thing about the Lecoq School is it still has this autocore when, whatever stage they're at, groups of students are told to go away and, create a piece based on whatever it is they're learning about, the way their body's expressive, and stuff like that, and then to show it and share it. And I've been to Lecoq, but apparently some are great, some are rubbish, some get shot down. But equal fairness. The moving picture mime show had this incredible show, which is 3 people doing the whole film of 7 Samurai. That's cheek, man. And now, in fact, one of their oldest members, who's still acting, does a solo version. Hats off to David Gaines for attempting the impossible, which is what theatre does. It's on a stage.
A lot of the mentions and references. I really hope for those who are watching that there is stuff out on YouTube on those. And
a lot of this stuff is 80s, 90s, when it was, when it's before YouTube, when it was, before digital, or if you had a digital camera, my God, it's £2,000, even for like an analog video camera. If we have access to so much knowledge, begs the question, what are we doing with it? You have to have, in order to make less than even a teacher would earn for a long period of time, you've got to really want to do it for whatever crazed reasons of your own. I am an artist, darling. And you have to try and become a master of your own small world in a medieval guild sense. You have to be able to think about it, know what you know, and also know there are places that you don't know. I mean, I still go and try and do a couple of aspects of theatre training every year, or theatre related stuff, because otherwise you have to keep challenging yourself. Otherwise you become a pale imitation of yourself. Someone, I'm not defending Morrissey's racism, but someone said, there was a really great comment, said that even Morrissey's become a bad Morrissey tribute act. Engage with your audience. Yeah. Don't preach. Don't be ideological. Well, you can. I'm not stopping you. But engage. Find something that engages them in their brains, asks questions. And that's not even... Asking questions is one of those words you say, so you're challenging the audience? Well, I'm putting images. What theatre can do very well is juxtaposition. And if I put 2 images together, this is the pen of, this pen used to belong to a Chilean.
Victor Jara.
No, this was Pinochet's pen, right? Oh. This was Pinochet's pen, and this is my Captain Haddock mug, right? Here are 2 things being put together. What's going on in your head? I don't care what's going on in your head, but if you put images like that together, or this is the mug, or this is the mug of Victor Jara, and this is Pinochet's pen.
I was just about to say.
Yeah, right.
2 opposing faces.
Yeah. So what goes on in the audience's mind when you bring those 2 images together? You don't have to do anything. See, that I think is where the questioning. That's where you.
Yes.
That's where you ask questions, is because you're creating. I mean, it's the thing in narrative, or it's the thing that I got from university, or going back to doing a PhD, was people going, no, the drama does not happen in the stage, the drama always happens in the audience's minds. And you're going, no, look, there's actors on stage, mate, it happens there. But actually, all the reaction always happens in the audience's mind. And this guy, Eugenio Barber, basically said, how dare you think you can make the audience think, in a precise way. So suddenly his method of doing theatre is by juxtaposing highly resonant images. So he's concerning himself with making those images as resonant as possible, not with the precise meaning of those images, so that when you juxtapose them, there is more weird shit happens in the audience's mind than's dreamed of in your philosophy ratio. Sorry, could I just go back to a show which there's only little bits of video that did make me go, bloody hell, that's theatre.
Yeah,
it was
we'll
a
include it in
theatre
the
called
description.
Talabot. It was called Talabot, and its subject matters was the Commedia, and it was basically Eugene Bob said, I hate the Commedia because it's this, you know, formal system that means nothing to me. So we're going to use it and see what we can do with it. The life of Che Guevara, okay, and his relationship with his nurse, who cured his asthma with native herbs, and a Danish anthropologist called Kirsten Hastrup, who was the first anthropologist to write about actually seeing the hoodoo folk, the fairies, when doing field work in Iceland. And the other theme was the issues over returning museum exhibits to their native countries when it turned out, you know, they were the dead bodies of people's ancestors. So these were all thrown into the mix of this show Talabot, and it was performed in a very steep traverse. And I was doing this a directing course with him, and he says, if you sit in a different seat, you'll see a different show, right? And you're kind of going, well, yeah, really, man, you know, well, yeah, that's not that. So I saw the show 4 times, and because of the different juxtaposition of the actors in it, you are seeing images, or you're seeing different constructions of a painting. You know, it's like if you took the Last Supper and you cut it all out and moved all the characters around, you know, and you kind of go, that's what theatre does, you know, if you can create different images. So that was another, oh my God, that's amazing. And then I went to see the next 2 or 3 Odin shows, and they really weren't as good, which was, you know, very sad. And there's still someone I meet who lives in Newcastle, and we greet each other with lines from Talabot show, because it's amazing. So I want to be an anthropologist.
To that actually, because kind of I kind of don't need to even ask this part of the question, but because you've been doing it throughout, what other advice, other than the obvious, but what other advice would you give to not just actors, but also people that would, like you said, it's funny to jump into the art world without you being committed to all the negatives behind it. But what about academia, for that matter? Because
academia,
you're a dottore for that reason. So
I became a doctor simply because I know an awful lot about Commedia, and basically it meant I could go and interview a bunch of people I hadn't had, you know, I wasn't able to go and talk to just as me. So I created this, this PhD, which was new. It was basically, you know, why are people doing Commedia dell'arte now, for God's sake?
What can the actor? What can the straight actor?
But if you're saying why should an actor, you know, do theatre, what advice am I offering? Is that you have to support yourself in it financially while you're doing it. So find one of these awful, you know, 0-hour contract jobs that, you know, don't care if you disappear for 2 or 3 days, you know, for an audition. Be nice to everybody, you know, don't feel entitled. You know, if you didn't get the job, there's a reason for it. It might not be because you were the best actor. It might be because, you know, you just didn't look right for it.
You were looking for something else.
Television and filming is very much about, you know, do you look right for the part in somebody's mind? You know, there's a friend of mine who used to be a casting director, you know, who basically, you know, before she sent any of our actors to an audition, you know, we'll go and have a cup of tea with them. And she was trying to work out, you know, whether they were a wanker or not, you know, because if she's sending someone, you know, who will annoy the casting director by thinking they ought to have it, you know, that doesn't reflect well on her, you know. And actually someone who will go, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, oh no, I'll try that. It's something you want to work with again, as part of someone going, well, I've got, you know, if an actor says, I've got a better idea, you know, unless they're Tom Cruise and, you know, actually, you know, and actually pay and actually bankroll the whole thing. You know, directors go, oh, shut up, look, we've got 20 minutes to film this scene. Just do what I ask you. I know what's going on. And you've got to want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, you got to want to do it. There will be, have a plan B. you know, there are always things that are going to go wrong. Think about whether you're a hired gun, as in, you know, as in you are going to be an interpretive performer who is going to be directed, in which case your skills are in agreeing with the director, and being a nice person, and getting on with people, or whether you're going to be a creator, in which case you still have to be nice to people and get on with people, because, you know, at some point you're going to be asking someone to do weird shit for free, which I'm morally opposed to. But the hardest thing is finding the money. You know, understand the way the money works in theatre is a good thing. You know, have a look at a budget. How much money, you know, how much money can you borrow from a bank in order to pay actors for how long in rehearsal? If you pay actors that they do what you tell them, you know, that's the deal. It's your idea. It's your responsibility. If you don't pay them, you know, they feel quite rightly that they have an artistic input to this, which, you know, can result in a nasty soup of a show, you know, or something.
In terms of pay, how important is it to know our worker rights as performers? What lessons could you anticipate?
Join equity. Go on the equity website. I mean, yes. Well, it's employment rights. It's you know, because if you're creating your own work in a particular way, it all tends to be, the boundaries all become a bit blurred. You know, very often you are being given a fee to do this amount of work, you know, and then you've got to go, how many days is this? You know, what daily rate does it work out? How much work do I have to do outside, you know, the time, you know, oh great, look, I'm being paid £300, you know, like a week to do a 3-week run. And then you look at the contract, it says you must turn up, you know, with all your lines learnt on day one. So you kind of go, hey, I've got a big part. That's another 2 weeks work to learn the lines before that. So you're going, that's 900 quid for 5 weeks work. That's not so good, you know.
Read the contract.
Read the contract
thoroughly.
Learn to sing. Always practice. I mean, something I said earlier on. You know, you can't be an actor who's going, I'm going for an audition. Continually train, continually meet people, continually network. You know, it's hard doing that when you're in the sticks, like me, living in the middle of rural Gloucestershire. I've met and worked and kind of annoyed quite a lot of other, you know, local performers. So your pool of who you can work with locally becomes smaller. If you want to do theatre, keep going. If you want to do film and TV, you've got to make a film. You know, make a short film, get it into a short, you know, film competition.
So what about you do on your own?
Montage, study your angles, make sure it looks interesting. You can make films on your phone now, you know.
Yeah.
Get something on YouTube, keep bombarding people to watch it. You might get enough likes to get some income from advertisement. There's loads. I mean, I'm not the expert, you know, I'm just a kind of survivor who's kind of going, you know, I'm doing care work and a bit of online teaching because, you know, COVID has totally wiped out theatre. So I'm going, well, I've got to earn my living. So I'm using the other skills to, you know,
and
survive.
Current Olly, when facing pre-runaway with the traveling circus, and obviously I'm
now you have dreams about running away from the circus, not running into it.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, with the case with the
whatever.
Do you remember when they used to wear like the mask clowns back in? I think this became like a thing in America, and it happened in Britain.
No,
and it was
I don't
people.
Like that.
It was horrendous. As in, it was terrifying.
Yeah. No, I went to a clown convention in about the late 80s and smashed my red nose at the end of it. And you know, quite a few people did. You know, just not as a public thing, as a very private thing. And they're going, actually, these are not my clowns. This is not my tribe. You know, these are a bunch of people who bought the clown suit and bought the clown car, do lots of magic tricks at kids' parties. They're not funny. You know. There's nothing of them in it, I think, because if you put something of you in any performance, it's going to be unique. It's going to be memorable. You know.
So to that,
that's one side, and the other side is learn to copy. You know, learn to be an imitator. Really learn to, as a training thing. You know, become more expressive. Yeah.
Very much.
Be the best pirate. Be the best, Johnny Depp, pirate impersonator. It's a
Impression,
living.
yeah. So my question was going to be, Olly, with all your years of experience and wide range of work, if you were to encounter pre-university Olly, before perhaps you even knew that you were going to jump into the arts, what would you say to him?
God knows. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, you'll enjoy some of it, and some of it will be shit. And and if there was any particular evil person, you go, just don't trust them. Yeah, because you can't. You're talking about affecting the laws of causality here. Because if I said, whatever you do, man, don't do Commedia. I'm gonna do Commedia.
Not as a paradox generating sort of question, rather advice, exactly, advice that you would give yourself, because it will inevitably resonate with the people listening to us.
Advice is trust your own judgment, really. Is that true? If you want to be an artist, you got to trust your own judgment, but always practice harder. Always practice harder. I mean, we got quite good at juggling. We got paid a lot of money to do jugglers, because I was going to 4 different juggling workshops a week and then doing some solo practice. So suddenly you realise after about 2 or 3 years, you've stacked an awful lot of practice, and stuff like that. Actors can do that too. Learn a speech a week. At Guildford School of Acting, they made each student learn a new monologue, a new song a week. And you think, Christ, that's harsh.
Mental gymnastics.
It's mental gymnastics. It teaches you to learn something quickly. It teaches you how to deliver something quickly, and it gives you a range of material. Not embrace failure, but you learn more from something that doesn't work than from something that does. If you think that's gonna work, and then you do the show and it all works, you're gonna go, quick, let's keep it going and earn some money from it, because the next show we do is going to be more experimental, and that will lose us money. So when the sun shines, make hay, and in the winter write a new show.
That's training. I wonder how many shows will be written during the pandemic time or the quarantining time. So that we don't know of yet.
Somebody once said about poems that you never finish a poem, you just abandon it. If you're writing shows, that's what happens. You kind of go, oh, well, we'd really like to, improve that bit, but in fact we, run out of rehearsal, so we're just going to have to bodge that ending, and the rest is good. It's sometimes really frustrating. Because you can't afford to pay for 5 weeks rehearsal, you can only afford to pay for 3 weeks rehearsal.
We'll only lend you for 3. Yeah. Well, Olly, thank you very much for your time. It's been a great chat. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Eduardo.